Okay, so tonight, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to be doing the last lecture of the series that we began several months ago about the various challenges and struggles and trials of the 21st century. This is not a very easy time to be living in. There are many challenges from many directions. And unfortunately, not many people are doing well spiritually because of them. So even though I've already spoken about the issues or the problems and difficulties with the immorality, we also spoke a bit about religion and about the importance of faith. So even though there are many people who are struggling with faith, struggling with immorality and the like, it doesn't mean everybody. There are people who are really trying their best to do the right thing, to live a spiritual life. They may have it difficult, but they're trying. So I decided that the last lecture in this series should be about the pains of spiritual growth. I called it that because many people are familiar with the pains of growth. When children are growing up and there are spurs of growth, even though it's not because of the growth in itself that they feel pain in their joints and in other parts of the body, nonetheless that's what they are called, to describe a certain stage in life when children, either through tremendous amount of exercise or other things that they do, they feel those pains as they're growing up. But we will be speaking more about spiritual growth and the great pains that people have in achieving growth, spiritual growth. I'll begin with what the rabbis tell us in Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers. Hayom katzar v'melacha meruba. A very important statement that life is short. Many of us know that. It doesn't take too much to realize that. But not everybody is focused on that. People don't want to think about death. People would rather not know that life is short. But that's the fact. And the rabbis bring it to our attention that life, before you know it, it's over. But even though life is short, hamelacha merubah, there's so much work to accomplish. Therefore, don't lose track of what really is important to life. But when they said melacha merubah, that there's a lot of work, which work were they talking about? They weren't talking about physical work. They weren't talking about our professions and in careers. That is not the purpose of life. That is just a means to a goal. We work, we try to earn a living to pay our bills. So what did they have in mind when they said that there's a lot of work? People think that making money is something important. Accumulate as much as you can, you'll be happy, you'll have a lot of real estate, you'll have many possessions, you will grow. They look at growth with eyes on money. And we know that that is not really growth, because rabbis tell us this kind of growth, financial growth, even though in some ways it's good, but it leads to headaches. Marbe nechasim, marbe deagot. The more one has, the more worries he has. So this can't be the growth that the rabbis had in mind. It can't be. This is something that we should emphasize. And after all, how much money one will make really depends on his mazal, on his destiny and fate. It's not so much how much effort he puts in. It won't make that much of a difference if he has a PhD. This is not what we're here for. Ultimately, the real work, our real job in this world is avodah lamidot, working on refining our character. Man is incomplete. He's created in an imperfect state. And as the Kabbalah teaches us, that is part of the reason why Jews circumcise themselves, is to remind them, God left something for you to do, something incomplete, to remind you that it is your job to perfect yourself, to complete yourself. And perfecting ourselves, not necessarily with a career, even though that's important, but ultimately our priorities should be on perfecting our character, our nature. This is not only the tachlit, this is not only the purpose of life, it just happens to be that it's the most difficult job of all. Let's compare it to physical growth. Physical growth almost happens automatically. All you got to do is feed a child some cereal with milk, or whatever your choice is for breakfast. And at some point in his life, he may be 7'6". He may grow to be very tall, depending on his genetics. Not that much effort is required to contribute towards the physical growth of an individual. However, when it comes to nurturing the soul, which we have, when it comes to working on one's midot, on one's character, that is not so easy. That already does require a lot of effort. What happens, however, in real life is that this world, the physical world we live in, it's physical. And because it's a physical world, a physical reality, we sometimes forget that there is spirituality. It is not so obvious to us. And this physical world really confuses people. It makes people think that, listen, the goal is to earn a degree, to buy yourself a house, to have a nice car, a beautiful home, a wife perhaps. This is the goal, because this is what we see. This is what the reality is pretty much exposing us to. But this is not all. And because this is what the eye sees, the physical eye sees, people look at these things as the real achievements in life. You made it in life if you got yourself a good degree, you got yourself a good job, a big home, as they call it in this country, the American dream, a house and a dog. You made it. You have it all. But if you look at Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, Solomon, who was considered the wisest man that ever lived, he tells us something different. I've had it all. And he didn't live such a long life. He was about 52 when he passed away. He begins that book with very interesting words. He says, Akol Hevel, everything is a bunch of vanities. And you say to yourself, wow, he's being so disrespectful of this world, of creation, by looking at everything as Hevel Havalim, everything is vain. And the rabbis were concerned about that statement until they read the end of the book. In the end of the book, he says, let me summarize. Even though I may have said at the very beginning that everything is vanities, that people are misled by all the vanities, all the materialism, but the bottom line is, Sof Davar Kol Nishma, the bottom line is, at the end of the day, what really matters is that Elokim Yirah Bet Mitzvotav Shemo, Ki Zeh Kol Ha'adam. Be fearful of God, observe His commandments, His instructions, because that's what man is all about. Man's true achievements is what he made of himself, spiritually, his connection with God. What kind of a life did he live? Was he a good father, a good husband, a good neighbor, a good friend? Was he honest? His behavior, his deeds, but not just any deeds, because even though obviously there are many, many things that we can accomplish in life that are not necessarily spiritual in nature, but more importantly, and that is why he puts an emphasis this, is in our character. Did we earn ourselves a good name, as he says elsewhere in the book? Because a good name, a good reputation matters more than many, many other things in life. What did we strive for? Did you strive for all those vanities I spoke about? Or did you hopefully not forget that what's more important is your relationship with God and with your wife, of course, with your kids, with your neighbors, character. But the truth of the matter is that most people don't think about these things. They don't think the way Solomon did. And the question is, why not? I always had a question. I always found it very, very difficult whenever I read the news about prime ministers, presidents, and kings, and I see what they do and what they talk about. And I say to myself, how come all these people in power, they have so much money, they have so much influence, they can accomplish so much good? How come they're so corrupt? How come there's so much dishonesty amongst them? Not all of them, but many of them. How come they're not doing what's best for their people, for their country? What's going on here? Every other day you hear about presidents that have amassed billions of dollars. What do you need billions of dollars for? A few $1,000,000 should be enough. They have amassed, and how did they amass it? Through illegal ways. Extortion, bribes. And look at the poor people. The poor citizens of the country who are struggling. The economy of the many, many countries is in shambles, even though there are so many natural resources in that country. What's going on? The answer is very simple. You're going to say, man, they're corrupt. But it's not just corruption, it's more than that. There's a story of a rabbi who once met up with a student he hadn't seen for many, many years. So the rabbi asks his student, so how are you doing, my dear student? The student apparently was doing very well financially, and he said, Rabbi, believe me, I have no complaints to God. So the rabbi says, I don't care about if you have complaints to God. I just want to make sure God has no complaints about you. That you have no complaints to God? I'm not interested in that. But why did he say that? How come he expressed himself that way? That's the answer to my other question. Why presidents and kings, prime ministers, leaders, dictators, why they do what they do? They think of themselves. They don't think necessarily what is good for the world. What does God want of me? No, what is good and what is convenient for me? So when great leaders, I shouldn't even call them great, but when all sorts of leaders are not focused on the welfare of their citizens, but instead on amassing riches, that is why countries fall apart. That is why empires have crumbled. It is no wonder that the world looks the way it is, even though there's so much technological advancement, but spiritually, look what's going on. People, even on the top, they have all the wealth, all the power, all the means, are not really doing anything to better the lives of others because they're interested more in themselves. They're definitely not spiritual people. So if you ask yourself, why aren't people seeking to work on their character, on their nature, to elevate themselves, to form a closer relationship with God, is because they're only thinking of themselves, what's more convenient for their physical body. So they're not thinking about spirituality. In this generation, it's even tougher to be spiritual because there's so much materialism. The entire generation is very, very much immersed in this materialistic lifestyle. And in such a materialistic lifestyle, anything that is spiritual is very unpopular. So people don't think about it. The books about spirituality are not necessarily going to be bestsellers. For some reason, diet books are doing well. I guess people have no choice. They look at themselves in the mirror, and either they don't feel that good about themselves, or because of other reasons, they want to look good. But it's about the physical body. So the diet books are going to sell. But what about the diet for the soul? So it's all about the physical body. One of the ways that you can tell how life has changed is how today people don't repair anything that is broken so quickly. Everything has become disposable. Disposable contact lenses, disposable dishes, disposable cups. Everything's disposable. And for some people, even disposable marriages. And I mean it seriously. To repair something that is broken, something that is not doing well, it's too difficult. Let's get something new instead of repairing it. I don't see people using crazy glue anymore. It's very good. something that is broken, that is special to you, you don't want to throw it away. You try to fix it, if possible. No, today nobody cares about repairing. It's just too much work, too much time. It's just easier to get something new. Well, sometimes, of course, that's the only way to go about it. But when we're talking about a relationship, when we're talking about human character, human nature, people who have some sort of trouble, some addiction, to not try to repair it is a shame. It is possible to repair, but they're not focused on that because of the lifestyle. Their minds are being brainwashed across the board. Don't repair, just dispose, just forget about it. It doesn't matter, it's not important. There's great danger with this attitude. When a person does not try to repair, when a person does not make efforts to grow, he automatically deteriorates. You see this with older people. If they don't move around, they don't walk, sedentary lifestyle, they just deteriorate. The body deteriorates. The mind deteriorates. So in the same way that the physical body needs to act, needs to keep up and to be in shape, so does the neshama, so does the soul. The soul, in many ways, is trapped in a physical body. It can't fully express itself. But if you enable it, if you say you want to, it will be a lot easier. We first have to want to. We first have to show that we are interested in doing that. On its own, for the soul to express itself, to want to grow, it's very difficult. It's trapped in a physical body and it lives in a physical world. So there has to be, at the very least, a will, a desire, an interest in growing. That is where it all begins. If the will and interest is not there, obviously, it's not going to happen by itself. So one who does not aspire to grow, to have a better relationship, to succeed in his marriage, it will never happen. It has to begin somewhere. And the first step is to want it, to realize the importance of it, and to strive, to take the necessary steps to achieve that. So the question is, what do we do to ignite that divine spark that we all have? That's the soul. The soul is called a divine spark from God. What do we do to ignite that spark so that it can express its interest, its innate interest in wanting to grow, in wanting to work on refining its character? We can't escape the fact that the foundation for any spiritual desire or interest is emunah, is faith. If one does not have faith in God, then he's not going to be motivated. So we need to just remind ourselves that that's the foundation, because without that, there's no use continuing to talk about this topic. Why should somebody want to refine his character? Become a better person? What for? What's motivating him? He has millions of dollars in his bank account. He has several pieces of real estate. He has the fanciest cars. He has somewhat an average marriage. He has several children. They're doing well. Doctors, engineers. I mean, why should he become a better person? What's motivating him? If there's no faith in God, there's nothing really pushing people to do that. So that's always going to be the foundation. If it's not there, unless you prescribe to some sort of cult or some religion that has no belief in God, but believes in elevating oneself to be able to acquire a certain level of happiness, okay, perhaps. But otherwise, without any faith, people are just going to be completely oblivious to this important task that all of humanity has, and that is to become better people. So the foundation is emunah, the belief in God, that there is a God, there is a creator. Why is God so important? The belief in God is not only to prevent man from sin, from doing that which is wrong and not morally right. Faith in God is not only beneficial because it can bring about a certain peace of mind and tranquility. It does have that ability. It's not only because of that. I very much believe that emunah is really the lifesaver. A lifesaver from something called the Ruach Shtut of the Yetzer Hara, a spirit of folly that comes from the evil inclination. Rabbis tell us that the reason why human beings sin is because of the spirit of folly, craziness. A human being for a moment forgets himself. He is misled by this evil inclination, who uses his intellect, who uses his mind, uses his logic to tempt him, to convince him of something which is really wrong. The human mind is very creative. It is an excellent attorney. It can justify almost anything. That evil inclination uses that intellect, uses man's weakness to confound him, to mislead him. So emunah is the chevel hatzalah, as it's called in Hebrew. It is the lifesaver. Without that, one could easily be misled. What's going to teach him otherwise? What's going to ever get him to think, perhaps I'm wrong? Perhaps I've been mistaken all along in the way I thought, in the way I lived my life. What's going to get him to think differently? That they threw him in jail? A lot of people are happy in jail. They don't mind. They don't care. I mean, what's going to force people to change their mind about their attitude, about their beliefs, about their perspective of life? So therefore, emunah is a lifesaver. It helps people avoid the pitfalls of the evil inclination. It's their lifesaver. Otherwise, there's a lot of ruach shtut, a lot of spirit of folly, craziness, stupidity, silliness out there that will steer people's minds away from what is really important. So emunah is indispensable. We can't do without it. When one does approach this topic, when one is serious about growth, he needs to keep in mind that this is a very difficult battle. Milchemet HaNefesh, the battle for the soul, the battle that we wage on a daily basis with the evil inclination, is a much more difficult battle than World War II, than any other war that you can imagine. Because it's constant. The evil inclination lives with us, day and night, 24 hours a day, every day of our life. He's there. And he dresses up differently. He masquerades. He has all kinds of costumes. And even though we defeated him yesterday, there's no guarantee we'll defeat him the next day. Some days we're strong. Some days perhaps we're in a good mood. Some days perhaps somebody helped us. Who's to say that the next day it's going to happen in the same way? That we will be able to resist the temptation. So we shouldn't be overconfident in ourselves just because once upon a time we were okay. I'll be fine. This won't bother me. Be careful not to risk your spirituality by exposing yourself to the wrong elements, by going to the wrong places, by seeing the wrong things, because we're very vulnerable. Human beings are vulnerable. No matter how righteous you are, no matter how spiritual we may be, there's no guarantee. Anyone can fall. And there are many examples in the Torah and the Bible of great individuals who have fallen. And those incidents were recorded to teach us a lesson. The greatest have fallen. And you're not necessarily as great as they are. If they fall, anybody can fall. But it's not only a lesson about how people can fall, it's also a lesson of teshuvah. Even though they have fallen, they have not given up. They've not despaired and lost hope. If you fall, pick yourself up in the same way they did. They repented. They said, I'm sorry. Very valuable lessons that we learn from individuals who have made mistakes. But at least they have admitted it and have done something about it. So this is a difficult battle. The battle with the evil inclination, the battle to refine our character. It requires a tremendous amount of effort. But the rabbis tell us not to worry, not to be afraid of this battle. As I believe the Sefer Mesilat Yesharim writes, Hakdusha, holiness, tchilata milchama. The beginning is war. To be a holy man, to be holy, to elevate oneself to a holy state is a very difficult battle. Tchilata milchama, but that's only in the beginning. It's a battle. Sofa matana. In the end, it is a gift. In other words, after we've struggled, after we've fought hard to attain a level of holiness in ourselves, in our homes, in our life, God does the rest. He comes out and helps us and gives it to us as a gift. You've worked so hard, let me do the rest for you. Let me take care of it for you from now on. From now on, from this point on, that evil inclination who works for me, God says, is not going to disturb you. I won't let him. So in the beginning, we struggle. In the beginning, there are many, many difficulties. To be holy is not something so simple. But if we try hard, at the end, it's a gift. All right, so how do we prepare for this battle? Very, very important condition or requirement in order to succeed in this particular battle is to get proper guidance. Before I give you some additional ideas, guidance is always going to be a necessity. And what kind of guidance? From somebody who has traveled through this road. Not just any knowledgeable person, not just any scholar. Ideally, it should be from somebody who has himself made efforts to achieve holiness, who himself is growing spiritually, who is an example. So guidance is always going to be a necessity. We need to read books. We need to consult with those who are very familiar with this path. It's not something that we can readily do just on our own. It is something that requires the help, the experience of others. Once we've gotten some guidance, it is important to be careful not to commit the mistakes that others have made in trying to perfect their character. There are several mistakes that people have made that has made it more difficult for them to grow. So before I tell you what those mistakes are, let me quote you what Rabbeinu Yonah says in his commentary on Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Fathers. Rabbis tell us, K'neh lecha chaver, acquire for yourself a friend. What's the significance? What's the importance of acquiring a friend? A lot of people claim they have many, many friends. That's not true. Those friends are superficial friends, not real friends, not the type of friend that you can trust. The rabbis are advising us to acquire a friend, to form a strong relationship with one individual, at the very least one, it says, but that you can trust. Why put so much into a friendship? Besides the benefits of friendship, because if you really work hard on acquiring one friend, this will facilitate and make it easier for you to be friends with many, many people. In other words, by working on acquiring one friend, by being devoted, by caring, by giving to another individual, this act of acquiring a friend will enable you to get along better with others, to be a friend to all. So Rabbeinu Yonah says, this is the same way that we should approach working on ourselves, refining our character. Work on one friend, work on one midah, one characteristic. Don't grab everything. Don't grab all the mitzvot, all the commandments at once if you haven't been observing them. Start with one. One. Acquire yourself a friend. Acquire yourself one midah, one characteristic. Work on one area that needs perfection, that needs refinement. Because if you do so, not only will you hopefully succeed, but this will give you the strength and hopefully the momentum to continue on to work on other midot. You can't grab the whole thing. You can't do everything at once. What happens when you do? That's one of the mistakes that people make, and they fail because of that mistake, is that they take upon themselves, they commit themselves to just too many mitzvot, too many midot, too many commandments, or too many characteristic flaws that they want to refine. Start with one. Another mistake that people make is that they grab the more difficult ones. Start with the easier ones. Start with the one that you have a better chance perfecting. Don't start with the most difficult one. That's another mistake. And the third mistake is that people make commitments for the long term. You can make a commitment for the short term, for 1 week, 1 month. I will do so, I will do it differently. Think of short term, not long term. It's just easier, it's more manageable. So these are some of the mistakes people make that we have to avoid if we want to succeed in working on ourselves and elevating ourselves. A very important characteristic that will really be the key, I believe that it's the key to success, is being truthful. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Mi yagur be'olecha, mi yishkom behar kodechecha. Who will reside in your tabernacle? Who will dwell in your holy place? One of those individuals, or one of the characteristics of that individual, is v'dover emet bilvavo, that he speaks the truth in his heart. In his heart? What does it mean to speak the truth in his heart? The best way to understand this is why people fail, not only because of what we said before, but because of a certain flaw that they have. What I mentioned earlier is also true, but there's also something that makes it even more difficult for people to succeed. And that is because they are reluctant to face the painful truth that they have done wrong. So dover emet bilvavo, to speak the truth in one's heart, is to face the painful truth that we have done something wrong. Do you have the courage to feel the pain of accepting the truth? So if that is not dealt with, even though we make commitments and we do our best, it's just not going to last. Dover emet bilvavo, speaking the truth in our heart, is really a prerequisite. And that's, even though it sounds simple, that's so difficult for many people. People are reluctant to face up to this painful fact, painful truth, that they have done something wrong. I also would like to add what I found from my experience, what really helps, and this is very much emphasized in Chassidut, in Hasidic circles, is happiness. As one rabbi said, there's no prohibition in the Torah to be sad, and there's no positive commandment to be happy. However, even though there's no prohibition to be sad, what sadness has caused, no other characteristic trait has caused. In other words, sadness has led to the most trouble, has brought about the most problems to people, sadness and depression. So even though there's no prohibition, but I can tell you what sadness has done, no other midah, no other characteristic has done. Same thing with happiness. There's no positive commandment to be happy, except for the holidays. But to be happy all the time, there's no such a commandment. But I can assure you, the rabbi said, what happiness has done to people, no other beautiful, positive trait or characteristic has been able to accomplish. What happiness can accomplish, nothing else comes close to. So there may not be a positive commandment to be happy, but just realize what happiness can do for you. It can contribute so much in many, many areas of our life. So now comes the next question. Well, if it's so important to be happy, how can I not avoid being unhappy when we fail? In other words, yes, one can agree that happiness is important, but it's so difficult not to be unhappy when you fail. What then? To that, Solomon tells us in his other book, Mishlei, Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. Don't forget that the righteous man, the one who's really interested all his life to do the right thing, he may fall 7 times, but he will rise again. he will pick himself up. He may fall many, many times. He may fail. But he will get up. He will not just stay down. Sheva yipol v'kam. Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kam. A tzaddik can fall 7 times, but he always gets up. But why does he fall? So the rabbis tell us, don't forget, many times the fall, yesh yerida letzorech aliyah. The fall is necessary in order to grow. You sometimes need to fall in order to pick yourself up and continue to elevate yourself to a level you would not have attained had you not fallen. It is because of people's failures in life, whether it's business or anywhere else, that has gotten them, that has motivated them, that has challenged them to grow, to overcome their problems. Had you not had that challenge, had you not fallen, you would not even have thought to change directions and to overcome the problem. So, there's nothing to be afraid of. Yes, even the righteous people fall, but they realize that the fall is momentarily. It's to get them to grow even more. And therefore they're not discouraged. And when there are painful falls, we must not forget that pain and suffering is an atonement. It comes to rectify something. It just doesn't happen by chance. Baalei teshuvah, people who are doing teshuvah, people who are repenting, Jews and non-Jews. There is some rectification, and that is managed by God. Pain and suffering deals with that rectification. It could be from a previous lifetime, it could be from this lifetime. It just doesn't happen that people just suffer for no reason. Things that we cannot control, all kinds of painful experiences, is from heaven. And they definitely serve as a kapara, as an atonement. Baalei teshuvah, those who are repenting, have something else to contend with. Since they were once upon a time sinful, and they have a record of sins, many, many sins on the record, the Yetzer Hara, that evil inclination, is after them. And he says, well, this individual was a good client of mine. He was my customer. I used to get him to do all kinds of terrible things. He pursues him. This evil inclination will go after him and try to make him fall again and again. And it's going to be very testing and challenging. So those who are doing teshuvah, those who are repenting, those who are really trying to perfect their lives, in some way they must realize that the evil inclination will not just let them do it so easily. He's going to come after them and try to test them to see if they are really sincere about their commitment, their new commitment. Also, there's a beautiful mashal, a beautiful parable that explains why God makes it a little bit difficult. It's not that it really is difficult, we perceive it as so. But what's behind this difficulty in changing directions in life, in wanting to become better people? So the mashal, the parable goes as follows. Imagine a father who's so happy with his child, seeing the child grow, taking his first steps, crawling, and when he finally stands up, he's looking forward to see the day where he will be walking on his own. But in the beginning, that little baby, as he's beginning to walk, he falls. He can't stand by himself. So the father helps him, holds him with his 2 hands, and helps him walk. Then the father lets go for a second, then he holds on to the hands again, lets the baby walk, or the toddler, right? And then holds him again. And after a few days or weeks, as the child is getting a little bit more comfortable and better in walking, the father moves away from the baby, takes a few steps back. And the baby says, come, hold on to me. The father says, no, you come to me. You come to me. And as he's getting closer and closer, the father is going further back. And the baby says, come and hold me. I'm going to fall. And the father is taking a step back and back and back and back. Why? Why doesn't he hold him? Because the father wants him to walk on his own. So little by little, he's letting go, stepping back, and enabling his child to be able to approach him on his own without having to hold on his hands. So sometimes it feels that way, that he's letting go of us. He's not holding our hand. You're growing, you're coming close to him, He wants you to be able to walk on your own. He will help you. Of course He's there. He's always there to help you. Sometimes we perceive it that He's letting go, that He's not assisting us. He wants us to be strong. He wants us to be able to walk on our own. Today, the 21st century, this kind of work, what we are talking about now, the spiritual work, is so much more difficult in the past, as we said earlier, because of all the challenges that we're facing today that our forefathers did not have. So there's no doubt that today we're going to be doing battle from all kinds of directions at all times. And the question is, if today it's so much more difficult, can we still succeed? And the answer is yes. The rabbis tell us that today every small deed that we do is greater than had that deed been performed 100 or 200 years ago, when the challenges were smaller. Right before Mashiach comes, right at the very, very end, the end of days, when everything is about to finish. When I say everything, I'm meaning all these challenges. When the truth will finally come out, it will become very, very difficult, very, very dark, very unclear. And what will be required of us is not necessarily to make somersaults. It was not necessarily to do things that are beyond our abilities, but even to take small steps. And those small steps will be admirable, much more than years ago. Because the challenges are greater, the reward will always be according to the effort that we invest. So today it requires more effort than in the past. A lot of people do not believe in God. Faith is much more difficult to come to have faith. So if one, nonetheless, and despite all, still has the strength to do battle with his evil inclination, that is much more admirable than had he demonstrated this in the past. But what if we fail? What if we fall? What if we make mistakes? Get up and start again. What people sometimes forget is that even though they've fallen and they've made certain mistakes, at times you did win, didn't you? As one student complained to his rabbi, "Rabbi, it's so difficult. I always fall." So the rabbi asked him, "Yes, you fall. But didn't you ever win? Didn't you ever control yourself? Didn't you ever defeat that evil inclination?" He says, "Yeah, once in a while." Well, don't minimize that once in a while. Be happy for every time you won. Be happy for every time you control yourself. Imagine somebody who's angry, and he succeeds once a week to hold his mouth closed. He doesn't always control himself, but once a week somehow he resists the urge to yell back. You won once a week. That's better than nothing. So don't minimize your successes. Give yourself credit for every time you win. Obviously, it would be very disappointing and very sad if somebody always loses the battle. We have to win sometimes. And if we do, we should not minimize those few times. We have to our advantage something called a good thought. Rabbis tell us HaKadosh Baruch Hu metzaref tamachshava tova lemaaseh. He actually considers a good thought as worth it. It's something of worth. And he combines it with a deed. In other words, even though all it was a thought, we never got around to doing anything. We never were ever able to implement our good thought. But we thought about it. We intended. We tried. A good thought has worth. It has so much worth that God combines it with a deed. He may help us, therefore, perform that deed one of these days. And we'll get credit for it. So don't minimize your thoughts. God will take all those thoughts and help you, especially when it comes to spirituality. When it comes to spirituality, we have a tradition, a Kabbalistic tradition, that God always assists the individual if he prays for help in this area. If one prays to God, "Please let me win the lottery," you're not necessarily going to win the lottery. Your prayers will not necessarily be heard and accepted because God knows what's best for us. But spirituality, "God, please help me have peace at home. to have a better relationship with my spouse, to be able to be closer to you, to be able to work on some weakness that I have. Anything that is spiritual in nature, we always will receive help from God. God wants to help us. So if we pray and do our best to work on ourselves, we are promised divine assistance. Another area that is very important to emphasize, that some people really, really struggle with, especially in this generation, is the area, I think I will translate in English into chastity. I don't know how many people understand what this word means. It means being pure in your physical relationship. If you're married, just sticking to your wife and not to other women. If you're single, it means being careful with pornography, being careful with anything associated with immoral behavior of that nature. And I don't want to be too explicit about it, because I think most people will understand what I mean by that. Any kind of behavior that is deviant, that is not compatible with the Torah, in this area of pornography and the like, the Kabbalah explains is extremely dangerous. We're not talking about the sin in itself right now. We're talking about spiritually. It blocks the way. It shuts down the pipeline from above. And many areas of life can be affected as a result of that. One's livelihood can be affected by it. When a person does not behave himself in a chaste way, it can really, really disturb him in many areas of life. There's no way in the world that he will be able ever to advance spiritually if he has this flaw, this weakness. And the reason for that is because we cannot live a life of contradictions. Eliyahu the prophet rebuked many, many Jews of his time by telling them, Ad matay atem poschim al shtei aseh, till when will you lead a double life? If God is the true God, then go with Him. Lechu acharav. You can't have God in the morning and pornography in the afternoon. You can't have this kind of a contradiction. You can't have one wife in your home and one wife outside. It's a contradiction. But some people live with contradictions. When a person lives with contradiction, he wants to be spiritual. He's praying 3 times a day. And he's doing all kinds of things that are so sick. I guess we can say that, right? How is he going to get anywhere? Spiritually, he's being blocked. He's blocking himself. He's doing certain things that are completely clouding his judgment, clouding his mazal, obstructing his way of having a closer relationship with God. No matter how much he tries, no matter how much, if he has that kind of a lifestyle of dirty movies and anything that's associated with that, if you understand what I mean, it will be very, very difficult for him to grow spiritually. Now we've come to another area that is somewhat difficult for some people. They'd love to become more observant, more religious, better people, but they're afraid of what the public is going to say. Their neighbors, their family, their relatives, they're going to make fun of them. I've already spoken a little bit about that in other lectures, but I think for now just want to quote Mahatma Gandhi. I think he basically said it very, very nicely. He said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win. So that's what we have to do. Pretty much ignore them, because that's what they're doing. They're first ignoring you. And even if later on they mock at you, they make fun of you, in the end, you will win. If you're strong and resist, don't let that bother you. If you know what you're doing is right, Just expect it. Expect that people will make fun. And it will be easier for you to contend with this kind of problems. Then we have other individuals who really have complaints about religion and faith. People have complaints. You should know that they must have seen something, they must have had some disappointment, they must have gone through something in their childhood that they're bitter about. It's not that they've done research and now they have complaints. It's much more than that. And because of their pain, because of their emotions, they're not necessarily thinking logically. They are so disturbed that they don't want to consider embarking on this path of spirituality. As far as they're concerned, spiritual people are no good. Let me give you a story and you will understand what I mean. There was once an individual who survived the Holocaust, who met up with a rabbi after the Holocaust and told him about his experiences and how he survived the war. And the rabbi asked him, so tell me, are you still religious? Are you still observing the mitzvot? He says, no, Rabbi, I decided to drop everything. I don't believe in this. What I've seen completely discouraged me. He says, what did you see that discouraged you? Now, here we're not talking about an individual who has complaints to God about why he allowed the Holocaust to happen. That's another problem. Here we're not talking about an individual who had issues, personal issues in his finances or an illness in the family, who also can make people bitter about it. This individual, however, was thrown off or was perhaps shocked to see something in one of the concentration camps, and that's what disturbed him, and that's what he used to justify him letting go his beliefs in God. What did you see? The rabbi asked him. He says, Rabbi, I was in such and such a concentration camp. And you know, Rabbi, what went on in the concentration camps. We barely had anything to eat. We starved. We barely slept. We knew that any day we can die. You know the conditions that we lived in. And one day, I saw a group of Jews. They wanted to pray. And there was only one amongst that group that had a siddur, a prayer book. And what did he do? He charged them to use his prayer book. Not money, food. You want to use my prayer book? You give me your piece of bread that you got this morning. Rabbi, if this is what Judaism is all about, if this is what faith is about, if this is what spirituality is about, I don't want anything to do with it. How could this individual abuse the Siddur, abuse the people, take advantage of these poor people just to have a little bit more bread? A prayer book? You should have shared it with them. If somebody religious can do that, Rabbi, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Rabbi asked him, but wait a minute. Calm down. What did those people do? The rest of the group, did they give him the bread? It says they all gave him the bread, yes. So wait a minute. I'm surprised at you. Why are you focusing on this coward and not on the heroes who were prepared to give their bread, their only bread of that day, so they can pray from a prayer book? Why are you focusing on a coward? Look at the rest of the group. The rest of them were heroes. I don't know the rest of the story, but I think the lesson is very clear. I hope it got through. He was making a big mistake by focusing on the wrong idea, on the wrong individual. Blaming one person for everybody, for everything, for the whole religion, for the whole faith. He's obviously not thinking straight. What this tells us is that it's important to have the proper perspective, not to be misled by what we see. So perhaps we're not seeing everything properly. Then we must remember that even though we're trying our best to become better people and to refine our character and to grow, that at times there will be challenges from heaven, designed in heaven. A challenge that is designed in heaven is not to test us, because God knows everything. He knows our thoughts. So he doesn't have to test to figure out what we think and what we would like to do. He knows on his own. The test is for us. It's for us to figure out where are we. Because if we fail the test, then we know we got to do it better next time. So sometimes tests, challenges come down and are designed specifically to see where we are. Let me give you a mashal, a parable. There was once an individual who was working at a factory, and he had a weakness, he had a problem that he used to come late. And every time the supervisor saw him coming late, told him, listen, you better do something about your lateness. And it repeated itself many times until one day the supervisor tells him, listen, if it happens again, I may have to hire somebody else instead of you. So you better shape up. That was enough for him. He got the message by being threatened to being fired. That was all he needed. And he decided from the next day on, he's going to wake up extra early, get into his car, and drive right away to be on time. Very nice. What happened the next day? His car didn't start. Just on the day that he was going to prove himself, the car didn't start. And he doesn't understand. God, why are you doing this to me? I want to show my boss that I am devoted, I am a good employee. You know, I do come on time. Why on this day are you making this happen? He could complain, or he could do something else. He could say to himself, this must be a test, this must be a challenge from above, to see how I'm going to react. I'm not going to complain, I'm not going to cry about it, I'm not going to stay home, I'm going to take a taxi. And he took a taxi, and he got to work on time. People would react differently to the exact same scenario. We all go through all kinds of experiences in life, whether it's in the family or with friends or with business partners, all kinds of situations. How do we react? Their reaction will be differently depending on how much we grew spiritually. People who did not grow would react according to their instinct. They would be upset probably. They would complain. You see the difference between how people react? It all depends on how much they committed themselves to really perfect themselves. And if one is not in that process of perfecting himself, he could lose it. Not only at work, at home too. I'd like to finish with a famous Chinese curse. You may be wondering why a curse. You'll understand very soon. There's a famous Chinese curse, may all your wishes come true. Is that a curse? Yes. Why is that a curse? Because satisfaction of all of one's needs means an end to life itself. If a person would have everything that he ever wanted to have and have no more struggles, no more lessons to be learned, life has pretty much ended for him. And that's what that Chinese curse is all about. The sensation of need is what motivates us to act, because we have a need, because there's some difficulty. We many times forget that this world, as physical as it is, it's still called Olam HaTikun, as the Kabbalah calls it. Olam HaTikun means this is a world to rectify, this is a world to correct, to perfect. There's always going to be something to correct. You're never done fixing. We always have to grow, continuously grow. So that never ends. But,
Rabbi,
yes.
Do the Chinese see it as a curse?
Well, those who are familiar with it say it as a curse, sure. But this is an old one. I'm not sure if they're using it today. I think they've come up with other curses by now. Yeah, but this is at least a wise curse. People could be easily discouraged, however, when they see how so many people are not growing. So many people are not doing anything about their flaws. So many people are not doing anything about their marriages. So for this, I want to use Gandhi again. And Mr. Gandhi has some very interesting insights. You may not agree with all his philosophies. Okay, that's fine. But he nonetheless had some interesting insights. He said, you be the change that you wish to see in the world. Don't wait for everybody else to do it. You be the change that you wish to see in the world. And this is similar to what our rabbi said. B'makom she'en ish, ishtadel liyot ish. Even if nobody else is doing anything about it. Nobody cares. Everybody's behaving in a very decadent, degenerate way. You don't have to be like them. You be the better person. You be the change you want to see in the world. However, for an individual to actually want that and to be that, all he has to have in mind is Lasot Retzon Borenu. He needs to want more than anything else to do that which God wishes for him to do, not that which he wishes for himself to do. As we began to say, unfortunately, how many people in power, with riches, and ability to influence, don't use all that power and influence to do the right thing. What a shame. So in order for us to want to change, in order for us to want others to change, what we first have to care about is what he wants. That has to be more important than anything else in the world. If one really believes in that, one really acts on that, then all he is interested is in doing the right thing, that which God wishes for him to do, then B'ezrat Hashem he will succeed.